Hello everyone and welcome back to Hellstormwargaming, and if it's not welcome back then subscribe right now, so next time it is welcome back. Cheers mate. So I was going to make this video premium only, but then I figured it was quite an interesting topic that a lot of people might not have seen or might not have picked up on yet, so I thought I'd bring it to you guys on YouTube as like an extra coffee time this week, rather than the usual coffee time which we'll be doing on Sunday. This video is about Space Marines, but it's mostly about the two supplements that we've had recently, Space Wolves and Blood Angels. Damn. And the reason I bring this up is this video is essentially based on a Reddit post that I saw on Warhammer Competitive. Now, as you may know, I'm a Space Marine player. I've been a Space Marine player for a long time, and I've been looking at the Blood Angels as a supplement because I think they're a quite interesting army to play, and I quite like the look of like a combat-based army, and I've actually been writing lists over on Premium and sharing those to Premium subscribers, and you can do that right now by clicking join down below. Become tier 3 and get an extra video every single week. But this video is mostly about something that I didn't even click onto, and I thought I'd share that information with you and see what you guys thought at home as well. As always, I like to relay information and kind of extend that discussion and kind of bring something that you might not have noticed into light, which I always think is quite interesting. So the main topic we're going to be talking about is rules writing inconsistencies and whether they are actually inconsistencies or they are supposed to be this way. It's hard to explain. It's hard to allude to what I'm going to be talking about without straight up saying it, so I'm just going to have to cut to the point. This argument is all about rules as written versus rules as intended, and whether the rules as written are supposed to be as they are intended, or whether this is inconsistent writing. Are we playing Doctrines wrong? By that I mean is that these books are really strong because they have a lot of doctrine manipulation, and by that I mean being able to manipulate the current combat doctrine that's in play on a particular turn. And what I mean is using Savage Echoes and Savage Fury. Now these are the abilities that these two armies get whilst they're in the Assault Doctrine, and essentially it's a buff in combat. For Space Wolves, it's generating an extra hit on a 6 to hit, and for Blood Angels, it's having an extra attack on the turn they charge. Now, when you're playing the game normally, everything is fine, everything makes sense, you know? Turn 1, you're in the Devastator Doctrine. Turn 2, you can move into the Tactical Doctrine, and turn 3, you move into the Assault Doctrine. And you get extra AP on each type of weapon in each doctrine. Whilst your Devastator Doctrine is active, heavy weapons get an extra AP on their guns. That was straightforward enough. Tactical is exactly the same, but for rapid fire and assault weapons, and then the Assault Doctrine is for melee weapons and pistol weapons in addition. So chainswords, bolt pistols get an extra AP, and all of that is fine. That all totally makes sense. What is interesting is that these books, as well as the base Codex, actually has an ability as well called Adaptive Strategy. These books have ways that you can manipulate the doctrines to your favor, because it used to be used to just move through as you want. Now you have to follow a certain order, and these books both have ways of getting into different doctrines at different times. For example, all Space Marines have access to Adaptive Strategy, which instead of having the current doctrine active, it triggers all doctrines active for each attack made by a unit, whilst your Warlord is alive. Now, the Space Wolves have Savage Fury, which is their ability. You score an additional hit on a 6. They also have Bestial Nature, which is on page 47, and it has Instincts Awoken on page 52, and then it has Savage Killers on page 76. So let's go through those now. So Bestial Nature is 1 CP, and it says use this stratagem in your command phase. If a combat doctrine is active, select 1 Space Wolves, Infantry, Cavalry, or Biker unit. Till the start of your next combat phase, it gains the bonus of the Assault Doctrine instead of the active combat doctrine. Now, I've already gone over what the bonus of the Assault Doctrine is. It's +1 AP on your weapon. Now, there is other abilities that you can get, such as Savage Fury. We're going to go over the wording of this, and this argument is all about rules as written versus rules as intended, and whether the rules as written are supposed to be as they are intended, or whether this is inconsistent writing. Now it says you gain the bonus of the Assault Doctrine instead of the current active combat doctrine. Instincts Awoken on page 52 is a psychic power, and it says instead at start your next psychic phase, each time modeling that unit makes an attack, the Assault Doctrine is considered to be active for that attack instead of the currently active doctrine. And that's kind of like keywording, saying that during the attack. At no other time is the Assault Doctrine considered active, it's only during the attack. The reason this is important is because you consider it during the attack, which means in the combat phase you've already considered which models are fighting, who they're fighting, and how many attacks are being allocated. Only then do you actually roll for the attack, and that is when the Assault Doctrine is considered to be triggered, or when it is considered to be active. It's not considered when you charge, when you are selected to fight, when you are allocating attacks. It's only when you actually go to attack, meaning you are rolling dice, and that is quite important. Now, Blood Angels have a similar ability known as the Blood Chalice, which is from the Sanguinary Priest, which has pretty much the exact same wording. In your command phase, select 1 friendly Blood Angels Core or Blood Angels character unit within 6 inches of this model. Until the start of your next command phase, If the Tactical Doctrine or Devastator Doctrine is active for your army, then each time the model in that unit makes an attack, the Assault Doctrine is considered active for that attack. And the reason I'm stressing on for that attack is because the way the Super Doctrine or Savage Fury and Savage Echoes trigger is very different to the way that is written. So Savage Echoes in the Blood Angels Codex on page 47 says, whilst the Assault Doctrine is active, each time this unit fights, if it made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention this turn, then until that fight is resolved, add 1 to the attack characteristics. Now, the Savage Fury says, whilst the Assault Doctrine is active for your army, each time a model in this unit makes a melee attack, an unmodified hit roll of a 6 scores 1 additional hit. Now, the reason I'm kind of stressing on saying whilst the Assault Doctrine is active is because of the way the wording is for the Space Marines Codex actually combat doctrines being triggered. It says, if every unit in your army has the Adeptus Astartes keyword, yada yada yada, this unit gains a bonus depending on which combat doctrine is active for your army. And then it says, during the 4th and subsequent battle rounds, the Assault Doctrine is considered active for your army. So the way the combat doctrines work is that usually it's active for your army on each one. Now, the way these two abilities we've just gone over, the Blood Chalice and the Bestial Nature and Instincts Awoken, it says each time that unit makes an attack, the Assault Doctrine is considered active. So the Assault Doctrine isn't considered active for your army, it's only considered active for that attack. Now you're probably saying, well, that means they're all the Super Doctrines are active. The problem is when you look at the Space Wolves book, and then we consider the Wolfen, Savage Killers is an ability that the Wolfen have, which says, each time you make an attack for a model in this unit, if your army benefits from combat doctrines, the Assault Doctrine is treated as being active for your army for that attack. And that is completely different wording to the other two abilities. The other two abilities says, the Assault Doctrine is considered active for that attack. Whereas the Savage Killers says, the Assault Doctrine is treated as being active for your army for that attack. Now, what Rules as Written says is that for Savage Killers, the Assault Doctrine is considered active for your army, which means it triggers all abilities for when the Assault Doctrine is triggered for your army. Whereas the other two abilities will only say that your Assault Doctrine is active for that attack. You could say, Rules as Written, it's not the same as it being active for your army, which means they would only gain the benefit of the Assault Doctrine's AP benefit for being in the Assault Doctrine, so your melee weapons and pistol weapons will be an extra AP, but it wouldn't trigger Savage Echoes for the +1 attack on the charge, and it wouldn't trigger Savage Fury for extra attacks on a 6 to hit. Now, you could say, oh well, that's not right. That isn't how it works. You get everything when you charge. And I was inclined to agree, because before I saw this post, I actually didn't even consider that to be a thing. I didn't consider the Assault Doctrine benefits, such as Savage Echoes, because my whole battle plan was a Sanguinary Priest, brought some Death Company into the Assault Doctrine, they run off, they get extra attacks, etc. It's a play that I actually considered for this in the previous list video that I already mentioned. The problem comes is when you have multiple ways to manipulate the doctrines, but also multiple ways that it is written to how it manipulates the doctrines, if that makes sense. Because you have two clearly different rules which do a very similar thing, but they are written very differently in one supplement. And that's what I mean when you have these stratagems, such as Bestial Nature and Instincts Awoken, and Adaptive Strategy, which is obviously in the base codex, which says for the attacks, all of the doctrines are considered active. But the Wolfen say that you are treated as having the Assault Doctrine active for your army for those attacks. And that's what the Juniper Bush Tree is kind of getting at, and what I'm kind of relaying the information. Again, he did all the research, I'm just relaying that information to see what you guys think. The real question is that Rules as Written, I totally agree, only the Wolfen are the ones that can actually trigger the multiple doctrines happening at the same time. For example, Savage Fury being active turn 1 and getting the extra attack on the 6 because of the Wolfen, but the other abilities actually not triggering that. But this is Rules as Written. Neither codex has had an FAQ currently, and this could come down to inconsistent writing. And by inconsistent writing, I mean multiple people working on the same book, having their own way of writing a rule for it to trigger certain abilities and to do the same thing. But with just looking at the Space Wolf Codex and having these two abilities written completely differently, you can't really say that the intention is to have the Assault Doctrine benefit, such as Savage Fury, trigger on all of these ways to put yourself in the Assault Doctrine, such as Adaptive Strategy, Instincts Awoken and Bestial Nature, and Savage Killers. You can't say that they're all the same, because they are written completely differently, and they're written differently in two areas. The Wolfen is written in one way, Adaptive Strategy, bestial nature and instincts awoken, and the blood chalice found in the Sanguinary Priest on the Sanguinary Priest data sheet in the Blood Angel supplement is written differently to the way the Wolfen is written. So if the rule was supposed to be the same, you would consider it written the same way, but they are written differently, which means, as written, they do different things. And I think this is a really interesting conversation, because until this is actually properly addressed, because even if an FAQ comes out, it might get swept under the radar, because people, they might not even, Games Workshop might be thinking, well, it's all the same, we don't need to really address it because it makes sense. Whereas because they've written it in two different ways, then it doesn't really make sense. I think the only way they could have got around this is if the Wolfen had the same ability or the same wording as the other abilities. If it said it was treated as having the Assault Doctrine triggering for that attack, I don't think this would have even come up. I don't think anyone would have noticed. So you would have just played it as they're in the Assault Doctrine, they get the benefit of the Assault Doctrine, all of them included. But because the Wolfen are written in a different way, it kind of starts getting like some cogs turning. And again, I didn't really consider it until I read this post. That's basically what this post is. It's just like, look, this is the way everything's written, and it's all written differently, so it doesn't all work the same. And I totally agree. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think to this situation? I appreciate this is like a very in-depth, like, knuckle dragging, like, rules written, rules intention, but I do think it's like a really interesting post, and I do think it's a really interesting situation. And stuff like this, like rules written with different language, is actually quite interesting to me. You can maybe see that there's different authors working on different data sheets and different abilities at different times, or what you're seeing is Games Workshop making an intentional rules change or intentional wording to make something work differently than what is like straight up on paper. Now, again, they could have avoided this if all the abilities that manipulate the doctrines had the same wording, or they could change it to where you say, like the Sanguinary Priest said something like, when you use the Blood Chalice, when they make an attack, they get an additional AP as if the Assault Doctrine was active. Which would, like, if it said as if the Assault Doctrine was active, then that would kind of imply that they get the extra AP, it doesn't stack with having the Assault Doctrine active and the Blood Chalice active, and you wouldn't get Savage Echoes. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. Do you think it all should work the same way? Me personally, I think that's probably what they were going for, but they haven't wrote that. Now, again, we're not going to know until we've seen an FAQ for either of these books, and whether it even gets addressed, because that is another thing. Will it actually get addressed? I don't know. But I thought it was really interesting. Again, if you want to read more about this, if you prefer to just read it, then I will leave a link to the Reddit post in the description. It's on Warhammer Competitive. Shout out to Juniper Treebush for making this really in-depth analysis, and I thought it was really interesting, so I wanted to share it with you. So if you enjoyed this video, then do like it. Let me know what you thought. If you want to get some more conversation going, do consider sharing it with your friends, especially those Space Marine players that are like, I'm getting it turn one, mate, and you could be like, Not that many people can play games these days anyway, so please subscribe if you haven't already, and hopefully I will catch you in the next video. Have a great day now, and bye-bye.